Hey there, awesome folks. This is Mentor Shelley, wanting to make sure that you become a better version of yourself professionally, guys. It's been a minute since I have come to you guys in regards to what is really going on in the job market. And of course, with your career and things of that nature, what's going on in your career. Of course, you guys, as you know, the economy is changing and the landscape of the job market is ever changing. It went from last year where people are looking for jobs and literally could run into a job every two steps they take. And now, in some sectors, in some fields, in some industries, jobs are very hard to find. Guys, of course, I want to make sure that I'm here to help you. And of course, if you have questions, of course, if you like what we're getting ready to talk about something pretty serious here. Overemployment. This is something that I've been an advocate for since the term was coined. What it literally means is that you're working at the bare minimum two full time jobs from home. Now, working two jobs has never been an issue for employers. What it seems to becoming for employers is the fact that they're working from home, number one, and number two, and they have concerns. Of course, from an employee career code standpoint, as long as you follow the parameters that I go over in several other videos, which I will put the links below for those, then I have no problem with you getting your bread twice instead of once. Now, from an HR perspective, I want to approach this with caution. I want you guys to be aware of what to expect from your HR departments if and when you do run into these issues. Now, I'm going to be talking about, or I'm going to be discussing this particular article from SHRM, from the Society of Human Resources Management. So it is coming directly from the national source. It is very important that you guys understand where what the perspective is, so you understand, number one, not only how to maneuver but to succeed within that space. Of course, guys, if you like what we're getting ready to talk about, go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel or wherever you're watching this, whether it be on LinkedIn or any other social media platforms, of course. And if you have questions in regards to any of this, you can always go ahead and go to mentorshelley.com/contact or leave your questions and comments below. All right, guys, so let's dive in here. The SHRM article was written literally a couple of days ago. How to respond when an employee is working two full-time jobs. Now, this is written from the perspective of HR professionals wanting to understand how to approach the ever endearing term overemployment, which is really two full-time jobs being worked remote. So this article was written by Kyle Ora LaBelle, employee relations, obviously, from the SHRM.org website. I also have the link for this article below, but of course you do have to be a member of SHRM, and I am a member as well. All right, guys, so let's dive in. Last year, Fallon Carpenter, Vice President of People and Culture at the financial planning company Sentinel Group in Wakefield, Massachusetts, discovered something concerning. A senior employee was working the same job at another company and lying to everyone involved. They are working both jobs during the same work hours, collecting two paychecks, and deceiving both firms, Carpenter said. We were contacted by the other firm because they noticed some suspicious behavior from said employee. Carpenter, who oversees 255 employees, verified that the employee was indeed working both jobs and fired the person immediately. Not only did this employee break policy, she said, they also are no longer aligned. They also no longer align with our values of integrity and being honest and transparent. Carpenter is just one of many HR professionals who have to deal with employees working two full-time jobs. Since the rise of remote work during the pandemic, it's also become easier than ever for employees to lead a double life, logging on full-time, juggling meetings and tasks, and collecting two paychecks. So let me pause right here. From this particular standpoint, the way it's being described and framed, it's that having two full-time remote jobs, which is what overemployment is a bad thing. In this particular instance, the employee lied about it. However, there's nothing wrong. I understand that there's people in any organization, right? Integrity is expected. However, I'm also a proponent of what you do outside of work hours. Outside of your regular work hours is also your business, your personal business. The first thing that kind of flies in the face of logic here is the fact that they don't have separate schedule. If you are going to be overemployed and you want to make sure that you at least have two separate schedules, whether you work one in the morning and then you have a flexible schedule where you can work at night. So that way you are able to dedicate your full attention to both jobs in crucial areas. Okay, so that's just number one, what I'm getting from this, as well as, advising you as a career coach. That would be the way to approach it. Of course, just based on how this looks, it looks like the person was only doing work for one, or they send some suspicious activity. It could be something as meaningless as, oh, you think somebody looked at you the wrong way and they decide to go digging. So you never know what really triggered this particular I wouldn't say witch hunt, what encouraged this particular inquiry. So let's continue. Let's see here. According to the statistics from MarketWatch and Bureaus of Labor Statistics, as of this past March, more than 8 million Americans were working multiple jobs. And a resume builder survey from October 2022 showed that 69% of remote workers have a second job, though the vast majority of these additional roles are part-time. Right, there's nothing wrong with that. Given the prevalence of remote work, the rising cost of living, and wages not keeping pace with inflation for most employees, some employees are finding it necessary to hold on to full-time jobs. Employers, this might be a time for you to maybe look at different salaries for folks, because people are going to do what they have to do to keep a roof over their head and food in their mouths. You can't blame people for wanting to survive, but you also have to actually do the job too. Now, but how are employers supposed to respond? Now, this is coming from an HR perspective, as far as how do employers really respond to this? To respond to when or if they find out. Like Carpenter, should they fire the employee? Absolutely not. It's not always necessary. And an employer that is open and honest and is willing to have the dialogue, and if the employer has the right mindset as far as how they treat their employees. You have some employers that feel like their employees are their slaves, and if they decide to go work elsewhere, it's crime and punishment, and they don't want people at their organization anymore. You have more reasonable employers that will at least have a conversation with the employee in regards to what as far as what they're doing and how it affects their overall job duties while they're there working. So let's continue. Verifying the information. Before taking any action, HR must verify that the employee is indeed working two full-time jobs. Now, I have a question. Yes, I'm in HR, and I understand exactly where the perspective they're coming from. But I'm speaking to you, and I'm talking to you guys from a career coach standpoint, because I want you guys to know what to look out for. If there is no negative connotations, or there's no wane in performance, why is it that a specific HR team is trying to find out if their employees have a second full-time job that's remote? If there's no issues with performance, I see this as an unwarranted inquiry. Okay? That's just my opinion on it. Now, it is important to look at their productivity levels at the job, of course, that they're doing at the organization, says Bob Kloss, Vice President of Human Capital Management with Benefits Advocates Network, BAN, in Cleveland. I recommend look for behavior changes. They're looking for behavior changes, guys, so it's important to make sure as as employees or as people that are in charge of their careers, you got to make sure your performance is on point. Okay, I recommend looking for behavior changes because they're looking for behavior changes. Your HR departments are looking for behavior changes to have a reason to start looking into stuff and to start inquiring about what you're doing. More so, not just from your job duties, but in other areas. Um, I recommend. They said the Bob Kloss is recommending that they're looking for behavior changes, including performance deterioration. And then ask employees, why is this happening? Don't just treat the problem, but be solutions minded and get to the root cause. Rather than lose an employee, work together to find a solution. Okay, this is a little bit more open-minded than than the other person that actually just straight up fired the employee, because apparently there were contractual and employment agreements in place for that employee not to work the same type of job for the competitor. So those are some of the things that I talk about in other overemployment videos, where I said you have to make sure you review your employment agreement to make sure that when you take on a second job or you're taking on other contract, part-time or full-time employment outside of the schedule you're working in your first full-time job, you have to make sure that you're not breaching any employment agreement so the HR department has a reason to fire you. If you're going to do this with a strategy. Okay? Kloss shared that when he believed an employee was working two jobs, she monitored the employee's productivity to find out the reason. She uncovered that the employee was working one shift for BAN and then another shift for a different employee. Okay, well, this employee actually had two different shifts. Great. Though the two did not overlap. Very key here, folks. The two did not overlap. I want you guys to pay attention to this. If you're truly still in 2023 wanting to do overemployment, make sure the two shifts do not overlap, if at all possible. Okay? Once we verify the situation, BAN said, from BAN, we engaged in a confidential conversation with the employee to understand their reasons for taking another full-time job, she said. When questioned by the employee's supervisor about his slowdown in performance, he shared that he needed the extra income to keep up with bills. Listen, people got to survive. So, as a career coach, I don't fault you for going out there to get your money up. So the article continues, because this person was a longtime valued employee, HR and his immediate supervisor worked with him to review and adjust his compensation so that they could leave the second job. Okay, well, listen, if you're going to give me a raise based on the fact that I'm out here hustling with a second job, I'm all for that too. At the end of the day, folks, I'm always about you as an employee, or you as a person that is career focused and is in charge of your own personal economy to get your money. So if this is what that meeting led to, then hey, I am all for it. Okay. Now, there are other situations where you have employers that are not as reasonable, or they're not willing to work with employees on that level. Now, he said, because this person was a longtime valued employee, HR needs the immediate supervisor worked with him to review and adjust his compensation so that he could leave the second job. Usually, if an employee is working two full-time jobs, there's a legitimate reason, likely financial, Kloss said. Ask questions and don't assume you know the reason why or immediately jump to termination. Exactly. We believe in open communication and addressing issues directly. Now I appreciate the fact that this particular employer at least had enough sense to sit down with the employee and find out what's going on, and not just immediately run to termination because the employee had a second job. Why would you terminate somebody that's really trying to hustle to keep their bills paid? So you should admire somebody that has that kind of ambition, not fire them for it. Anyway, protecting the organization. Keep in mind, guys, this is written to HR professionals. So I want you guys to be aware of what to expect from your HR teams if you are still seeking to be overemployed in 2023. When employees work two full-time jobs, they may be harming both themselves and their employers, says the workplace expert. Not necessarily. Depending on how the situation is set up, if the if you wanting to be employed, overemployed, you have to be strategic with it. You have to set it up where the schedule is amicable for you. You're able to schedule meetings. You can stagger schedule meetings to make sure that you are still meeting obligations for both jobs or for both opportunities. Whether you may be 1099 with one and be a W-2 employee, direct hire employee with the other. It all depends on how it's set up. And of course, I would definitely be able to help you, at least talk you through that. You can go to mentorshelley.com/contact in order for me to help you work through that type of situation. Or better yet, we can definitely strategize on that. That would be something that I could definitely work with you on at mentorshelley.com/consultations. If you want to get more in depth about two specific jobs that you already either currently hold or you're getting ready to hold. All right, guys, let's jump back into this. Now, from the employee's perspective, it can lead to burnout, decreased productivity, compromised job performance in both roles, said John Morgan, the CEO of Venture Smarter. Not necessarily. It's a Cincinnati company with 75 employees. It can also impact the overall well-being and balancing two full-time jobs, often resulting in longer hours, stress, and little time for personal life or self-care. Yes, I'm not saying that it's not possible. Conversely, the detrimental effects for a company, including a potential conflict of interest. This is where it's important, guys, as career professionals. You want to make sure, number one, there's no breach of contract or breach of employment agreements when you decide to become overemployed. Can't go work for Pepsi and go work for Coca-Cola and think you're not going to get fired from one or the other, because I'm sure in their employment agreement it specifically states one can't work for the other. You have to be mindful, not just, oh, I'm just getting the job, but you want to make sure that if and when you do you are becoming overemployed, that there are no negative implications for you. Okay. Additionally, it erodes the trust and can set a precedence that undermines the company culture and policies. Not necessarily what if the employee, if the career focused professional that wants to be overemployed does their due diligence, this is not something that's a factor. So sometimes when they're writing, they have this skewed perspective on overemployment. There's not always negative connotations with this. Morgan explained that he regularly looks at employees' data to track productivity, which can turn up potential cases of employees working two full-time jobs. Morgan is nosy. Regularly monitoring work hours and performance helps us identify any deviations or signs of dual employment, he said. You're making it sound like dual employment is a bad thing. This is basically how they're writing it. After looking at the information available, Morgan will then sit down and have an honest conversation with an employee whose productivity has been suffering to uncover the reasons, he said. Keep in mind, of course, guys, I'm always talking about, yes, you can be overemployed, but you have to be strategic about it so you really it doesn't lead to burnout and poor performance and things of that nature. That's going to be the red flag that they're always going to use to start inquiring more. And some of the stuff they ask is really still none of their business if your performance has not waned. Now, a misunderstanding or a violation. Now, here is where there's a fine line. And let's see here. I want you guys to be aware. In many cases, an employee who works more than one job may not know that there's anything wrong with collecting two paychecks, which the employer should discuss during the initial conversation with the employee. Depending on the circumstances, our actions may vary, said Morgan. In some cases, it might be a simple misunderstanding or a temporary situation that can be resolved through change in work schedule or workload adjustment. Okay. If it's clear that the employee is violating company policy and contractual obligations, Morgan continued, appropriate disciplinary action may be taken up and including termination, depending on the severity of the violation. Keep in mind, folks, if you have employment agreements that you're not able to work with a competitor for X number of time. You have to pay attention to those things and come to an agreement that if you do not want that a part of your employment agreement, or choose not to work at the particular employer that have those stipulations in their employment agreement. Reading is fundamental, folks. Career professionals like yourselves, I would expect to have that on lock. Now, here are some of the stipulations that some of the HR and some of the companies are going to put in place, because some of them, some employers, let's be honest, are vehemently against overemployment, because they think somehow, in some way, shape, or form, that all of their employees are only vowed to only to work with them alone, which is BS. Putting stipulations in place. Please expect this so you understand how to work around it, or you understand to work with employers that don't have some of these stipulations in place. If companies don't want employees working more than one job at once, it's imperative to include the rule in the employee handbook. Read the handbook, folks. Additionally, if it is permitted in some situations, spell it out as well. So make sure you are reading, make sure the stipulations that they have in place, that you're being compliant with it, so that will not be used against you later on. Whatever is written down, it's something that you need to comply with if you're working at the organization. For instance, Sentinel Group won't limit an employee's activities during non-work hours unless those activities interfere or in conflict with the employee's ability to fully and effectively perform their job duties, whether directly or indirectly, Carpenter said. I'm sorry, Carpenter, you also don't have any kind of jurisdiction or governance over what I do outside of work hours. I do the job. I fulfill my assignments. My performance is good or better than satisfactory. What I do outside of work is none of your business. However, outside employment for a competitor or work that is considered a conflict of interest is prohibited. That's why it's important, folks. Read your employment agreements. If an employee accepts outside employment, they should notify their manager. If your policy specifically does not state that, I don't have to tell you jack. Anyway, they should notify their manager or HR to ensure that their position does not pose a conflict of interest. I would listen, career professionals, make sure that whatever gig you're getting is outside of their conflict of interest, and it's not something that you're not breaching any you're not breaching any of their employment laws. Sorry, their employment agreements. If it is determined that the employee's outside work interferes with their performance or ability to meet the requirements of their position, they may be asked to terminate the outside employment if they wish to remain with the company. Okay. I'm also an advocate of I'm grown and I do what I want. So, which is what, but it's also important. Listen, there's a little rebel in me that says I can do what I want when I'm not in Europe and when I'm not working for you or outside of work hours. However, guys, let me keep the rebel in me quiet and make sure you are vastly aware of the intricacies of the employment agreements that you are currently tied to, and the ones that you have to adhere to if you decide to become overemployed or you're working on becoming overemployed, to make sure you're fulfilling your financial needs and obligations, or aspirations, I should say. Now, last but certainly not least, the part of this article, determine what workers need. This is written from an HR perspective. Remember that, guys. In most cases, employees who work 2 full-time jobs do it to keep up with rising costs or a significant expense, such as a new home or college tuition. Rather than losing that employee to another company, employers can find out exactly what those employees need to be productive and satisfied within their position, so they can give up the second job, start with open dialogue. That's not going to always necessarily be the case. I don't feel like one employer can tell me to let go of another, as long as I'm not breaching it, especially if I'm not breaching any employment agreements and my performance has not changed. So, this whole notion of making sure that the employee quits, I am in complete disagreement with that. We maintain an open door policy, encouraging employees to discuss their concerns or challenges with us so that we can address them promptly and collaboratively, he explained. Kloss and her team ensures that employees' pay is competitive and reviewed annually, that their workplace environment is promoting a healthy lifestyle. Employers should consider whether their culture supports a need for someone to work another full time job if it promotes healthy, holistic, financial, physical, emotional, and social well being, work life balance, she said. Morgan added that offering flexible schedule options when possible to accommodate employees' need may be a solution. Now, see, I welcome that. Flexible scheduling depending on the industry, position, and levels of responsibility involved. Okay, encouraging a healthy work environment and fostering a culture of trust are key components of our prevention strategy, he said. Of course, Kylie Ora LaBelle is a freelance writer. What I want to say about this whole situation is this. Number one, there's about two or three or four things I want to make sure that I bring home with this. If you want to be overemployed, you have to be strategic. And I don't mean in a joking sense of the word. I mean in a real way. You have to be strategic. Number one, make sure there's no conflict of interest. Number two, how do you make sure that there's no conflict of interest? Make sure um, there's several ways. You have to make sure that your scheduling is right, meaning that your schedule should be separate from one job to the next so that you can concentrate, you can focus on the task for one job. If you get done early, then you can start on the other one. It just depends on what your job title is or what it is your responsibilities. Make sure all of your tasks, responsibilities, assignments, projects, whatever it is that you're doing, that your job performance does not wane. Two, make sure you are checking, you are reading with a microscope your employment agreement to make sure that your second or third, because there's how people that are overemployed that have second, third, and fourth positions, making sure that they have um, different schedules so you can focus at different times and there's no overlap. Excuse me. Number four, making sure that if job number one is asking that you, or as part of their employment agreement, is requiring that you inform them about your second job or your third job. Well, I wouldn't tell them about the third job, but about your second job and things of that nature, please make sure that if they ask that and they said if you don't tell them, then they can use you not being upfront with the information as a reason to either put you on document and discipline and pretty much manage you out of that position. So it is very important. Number one, be strategic. Number two, please read your employment agreement. Number four, make sure the policies that you have to adhere to for job one is not infringing upon 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Make sure you're not working for a competitor for that company because that's also going to be included in your employment agreement. Make sure that there's no confidentiality or contingencies in your employment agreement that would prevent you from working with the other organization. You have to do your due diligence. If you want to be overemployed in 2023, it is going to take a little bit more strategy. And of course, if you're looking for help with that strategy, I can definitely go to mentorshelley.com/consultations. I am more than happy to help you work through the nuances and details of this, but also to make sure that an employer does not have a leg to stand on if they approach you when your performance has not waned in any way, shape, or form. That's usually the indicators, the key indicators that they use, as I told you, from an HR standpoint, which we just went over from SHRM, that they are looking for as a reason to start inquiring more. So don't give them a reason. If you want to be overemployed and you're not sure how to approach it, definitely go to mentorshelley.com/consultations. I am more than happy to go through with you, and let's work on a strategy together to make sure if you do want to be overemployed, you can be successfully, as long as you have the right strategy in place that fits your needs. And of course, guys, we are still on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Definitely go ahead and like, if you like the information that we shared today, go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you want more content like this, or if you have questions in regards to this, just general questions, you can go to mentorshelley.com/contact, where you can leave me a voicemail or an email message. And I'm more than happy to return that voicemail within an email within 24 hours, guys. If you want to be overemployed, I say go for it, because I'm all about funding and enriching your own personal economy. But I'm also about doing it strategically, so that if in the event that you have any kind of hiccups, you have your strategy in place to help support you in this process. All right, guys, this is Mentor Shelley, wanting to make sure that you become a better version of yourself professionally, and to make sure that if you want to be overemployed in 2023, do so with the right strategy. All right, guys, take care. You have a good one. Bye.